Hello, welcome to Truth Not Tradition Online Bible Study for January 20th, 2016. I'm Tony Smario, joining my father, Brother Sal, on his YouTube channel. Good morning, Dad. I'm back in Mexico, but you'll be putting this show together and putting it up before anyone else hears it. So we're going through Revelation. And last week we got through the 6th and 7th chapters, which introduces us to these seals, this little scroll that no one could open from the 5th chapter, and where we get introduced to this lamb slain, as if it had been slain, that was the only one in heaven, on earth, under the earth, found worthy to take this scroll out of the hand of the one who sat on the throne. Remember where this is coming from. This isn't Jesus doing this, Christians. The Lamb is the only one that's worthy to go get the scroll out of the hand of the one that's sitting on the throne. The scroll has these seals on it. Lamb doesn't put them on it. This isn't the judgment of Jesus or any of those crazy things I've heard in my life as a Christian. And there's no such intimation here in the way that it's told. These seals seem to have always been there, right? This is something in symbology here. John comes through this door. What does he see? A throne. And the one that sits on the throne is like stone, sardonyx and jasper. Was that it? And a rainbow made of emeralds, and seats with elders and living ones, or creatures or beasts or animals, as my translation says, that have different resemblances, like a lion, like a calf, like a man, like a flying eagle. They've each got 6 feathers. I mean, this is some crazy symbolism. This isn't straightforward. So the first thing John encounters is the throne of power, where all this is coming from, and the angels that are there. And so we saw how, coming up through this now, after the seals are opened in the 6th chapter, and I've been arguing for some time now that it's plain to see, if you really slow down and get rid of the traditional stuff that clogs the mind, and try and read Revelation with a fresh viewpoint, with some foundational understanding of Scripture and some reasonable scholarship in your methodology. It's quite clear that everything keeps filling in blanks. It stretches it all the way out from beginning to end. Obviously, when we look at the 5th seal, the first 4 seals all come out of mouths of these animals, and they all have this pattern: white horse, red horse, black horse, pale horse, as if, okay, here's your pattern for the apocalypse. Here's how it's going to come. Something that looks like righteousness or peace, then war, then famine, then death and Hades. This is how the apocalypse is going to unfold. Then it takes us to the 5th seal, which shows us souls under an altar, which it hadn't spoken of until then. No altar in Revelation. But now we have the souls being seen under the altar, and we argued last week the way that these are killed in the same manner that, they're waiting. They're being told, just wait a little longer till your brethren should be killed as you've been killed. And so I'm trying to see that perhaps that doesn't mean just Christians who believe, but what were the martyrs killed for originally? They were the ones claiming Jesus was the Messiah, and the Jews are trying to put that down. Jews like the Apostle Paul when he was Saul, the Pharisee. They were trying to, eradicate that heresy from Judaism, and they were killing these people that, just like they killed the prophets, they told them, right? They killed the Messiah, and then they killed all the people that came afterward, trying to say, they weren't coming after to say Jesus is saving your soul. That might be the result of what Paul finally sees. Peter gets the message that God's given it to the Gentiles, but it's Paul who explains the whole thing, that it was always there in the scriptures, that Isaiah and all of the prophets always pointed out that he's going to give it to someone that didn't ask for it. So they just never understood the reconciliation of all that prophecy. And so they were murdering these people that were trying to say Jesus is the Messiah, until they were finally scattered off that land. But for how many years? If this all went down in what we call, 33 AD or such, they weren't scattered till 70. You're talking about some 30 to 40 year period of being persecuted. They say Paul was executed and Peter, in the 60s, mid to late 60s. So you're talking about your basic 30-year period of these guys out trying to convince the Jews, and then selling it to the Gentiles amongst Jewish persecution, that Jesus is the Messiah. And they're getting killed for it. So what I was trying to point out last week is, it seems to be saying to me now, in coordination with the rest of Scripture, since Jesus told them, then you will be handed over to be persecuted for my name's sake, I see that all coming around again. They were offered their Messiah once when he came in the form they weren't expecting. And Paul taught that all that was, in Romans, Paul teaches that all that was, that their disobedience might bring about the obedience of the one who could then stand in for everybody else. But he told that church of Rome that he's writing to, don't be conceited in your grace that you've been given. If you're a wild olive branch and God's been able to graft you onto that original tree of promise, meaning salvation, then how much more so can he graft the old branch back on, and how much more reconciliation, how much more pleasure will there be in the reconciliation of that branch? So, it's been prophesied through every prophet that he will reconcile them, and even in this book of Revelation, in the end, God will have his way with them, and they will be of service in the earth. And that's why I say, when we read back in the earlier chapters about them being kings and priests and on the earth, that's not what Christians, when they talk about in heaven. So I think we don't understand the metaphors and the symbols the way we ought to. They've been confused over the years into our traditional understanding. That's why I try to take my time and get it down again, something a little bit, broader perspective to look at within all of our traditional understanding. Let's see if there's some things because I find there's too many contradictions in what we, the way we talk about it. And the first one is that these things somehow are happening sequentially, like Jesus is up there throwing down these, okay, now kill them with the fire. Okay, now get them with this. Now get them with that. And that all comes after these four horsemen. That'll comes after this, the sixth seal, in which people are at the rocks praying for him to fall on them. Then hold back the winds. Don't let anybody, don't harm anything yet till we mark our servants. And then all these people are standing before the throne who've come through the great tribulation. So what I'm saying is the whole thing shows the way it keeps encompassing its whole self, and then diving deeper into the details of the pattern, right? Because first you see that it's going to be these four horses. Going to start with a white horse. Going to start with some sort of either peace or righteousness, and that jibes with Daniel saying through peace he'll destroy many. That jibes with Daniel saying then the people of the prince that shall come will destroy the city and the sanctuary. The prince, not the man of sin. Paul says, he that now restrains will restrain, and then that man of sin will be revealed. So we got to try and find our way through all of these scriptures, that they fit together into one seamless, cohesive whole, which is why I've been throwing out on the table that I'm not so sure that if there is a rapture, or whatever that means, or whoever's going, that isn't part of this midpoint of the tribulation period, when that man of sin is revealed because he breaks the covenant with the Jews or stops their sacrifice. He sets up the abomination on a wing of the temple that causes desolation. And that's when he's revealed as the man of sin. And until then, something's holding him back that will be taken out of the way. If that's even talking about the rapture of the church, if there is even such a thing, right? I still have to flesh all that out for my own self. It seems like there is something, there is a bodily change in the twinkling of an eye, that, the last trump will all be changed. All of these things have to be reconciled. I'm just saying the traditional idea to me doesn't hold the water that it used to, as I'm reading through everything little by little. That's why I'm trying to take my time with all these things for myself, because I saw some things reading today and what I want to get to today now, and moving forward into the opening of this last seal. But I want to keep grasping where we are, in that we've just come through, sort of, again, from front to back. The sixth seal has to be the end. An earthquake that turns and the moon turns to, the sun turns to black like sackcloth, and the moon to blood, and the stars falling from the sky like they've been shaken from a tree, and the sky receding, and every mountain and island moving from their resting place. I mean, come on, this is that final, what some people have anticipated as a polar shift, right, is what this sounds like, actually. Stars falling that fast, moving that fast and all. That sounds like some sort of polar shift, or something so big hitting the earth that it causes it to actually move in its orbit on the planet, right? That's a planet killer right there. And what it demonstrated to me is that it shows there still will be commanders of thousands when that happens. So this whole thing is going to build to a climax. And all of these things have to be taken in their symbolical sense as well. And not only symbolical, but I'm going to present what I was looking at today, is that they're happening in a dimensional sense. John went through a door. He's in heaven, in the sky, seeing these things. A throne set in the sky, angels in the thousands upon thousands, and animals with the faces of lion and man and calf and eagle. Right? This isn't a physical tit for tat here. So these things, as they apply in real time, have to be sort of taken in their symbology where they're not interpreted directly, right? For instance, these things that are going to have power for 5 months to harm men, like scorpions, right? That's a direct application if we're getting a record that is accurate. This has given us a time frame, 5 months. This has given us a particular kind of hurt and pain, the kind that a scorpion gives you. Ow! If you've ever been, I've been hit by a scorpion. I've seen people hit by a scorpion. Ow! It hurts, boy. You swell up often. It throbs for hours, if not days, depending on the type of scorpion and the type of hit, right? It's like a bee sting times 10, usually. This is what it's predicting in word. So that's not symbolism. That's coming right through the 5 months, stings like scorpions. Okay, but the rest of it now, I think we have to reckon. The faces like men, on these little creatures, tails like serpents on the horses, on the horsemen that come after that. I want to get to it today, Dad, because I want to show, or excuse me, I want to try and demonstrate that for me, there's a symbology in all this that isn't directly the application we see, like the 5 months and the sting that feels like a scorpion sting. That's the direct application. But these locust demons, as they're described, being let out of a bottomless pit, do we see them the way John is describing them? Or do we just feel the sting of them? What do we see on the earth? So I want to bring that into this because, this was meant, if you remember, it says, take a book and write what you see and send it to the 7 churches. That's what Jesus, the figure that appears to John, the one that moves amongst the 7 candlesticks and holds the 7 stars, and right? This is what he says. Get a book and write what you see, send it to the 7 churches. And it also intimates that this is information for the servants of God, that they might know what's going to come hereafter. So some form of reconciliation of this stuff should be forthcoming to us. It shouldn't all just keep us in the dark. There should be something we find in this. So we left off last week, the 6th chapter, where the Lamb starts opening the seals. We get the 4 horses announced by the 4 animals. Then we get an angel, if I remember, announcing that under the altar was revealed the souls of these ones slain as he was slain. And so to get back to that I'm presenting, that could possibly be these people, that when the Messiah comes again, he's the Messiah coming again to those that are waiting for him. And it said there's going to be some waiting for him again. See, so how's that going to happen? Well, we've talked about how the sign of Jonah, the 40-day warning period, and that it's all going to repeat like it was in the beginning. He came out of the grave, people came out of their graves, they were seen in Jerusalem for 40 days. That left the impression, holy mackerel, right? There was something to build on when you talk about these apostles going around now, telling people he was the Messiah. Oh, you mean that guy who's, people came out of the graves with? The one that they were talking about? Him? Yeah, we heard about that. I mean, if something like that really happened, you can see how the story stuck and became, sort of one of the most popular stories in the history of mankind, that comes out of the oldest known narrative in the history of mankind, older than Homer. The Jewish Torah and the story of these Jews that comes down through history is the oldest single narrative in the history of humankind. I mean, is that just a coincidence? So anyway, that's where all this story comes down to now, and the Lamb starts opening the seals. There's souls under the altar that it's told, wait until there's more that are coming like you. And that's why I say that's indicating to me this is before the midpoint. This is before the point when the dead rise and these people are warned, and this whole movement of Jews that say Jesus is the Messiah. Wait a minute. Jesus is coming back. He's the Messiah. We saw Elijah or someone that came out of the grave and told us that Jesus is the Messiah, and that they're going to be handed over to be persecuted during this last 3.5-year period, which now in the 6th seal, by the time you get to the time of the 6th seal being opened, it results in whatever this cataclysm is that turns the sun black and the moon blood and the sky rolls up and every mountain moves, and everybody that's left, the people that are still commanding thousands, the rich and mighty men, every bondman and free man. So it implies that there's all these sorts of people. We're not dealing with a nuclear holocaust moment when there's nobody left but survivors in caves already. you've still got commanders happening when all this sixth seal, which is why I can say you can imagine now this sixth seal encompasses a whole frame of time and a whole bunch of events. And that's what I'm going to present now, are part of what we know as the trumpets. Okay, so let's try and get to some of that today now. Of course, then, we went through how you had what must be another break in time where it says, okay, now after this I saw, hold back the, 4 angels holding back the winds. Don't harm anything. Well, that's got to be before the sixth seal. So we're seeing we've already seen, in other words, what I presented is after the sixth seal, we've seen it all, right to the very end. Things are about to change. And I think we're going to touch on that today going forward. And then when what we call the 7th chapter opens, after these things, I saw something else. And what he saw was something that happens way back before things are harmed, whenever that is, whenever things start getting harmed, which I think we're going to see today in the trumpets. So what he sees in what we call chapter 7 in that interlude is before these trumpets start sounding that are harming everything. He sees that before that happens, 12,000 from each of the 12 tribes of Israel. That's why I think that's an important distinction, not people to warn the whole world. 12,000 from each of the 12 tribes of Israel are going to be sealed before any harm's taking place. And then after that, he sees what seems to be the result, a multitude from every nation and people standing before the throne. And we talked about that. That has to be at the end of the tribulation, because the angel tells them they've come out of the great tribulation. And now they're standing before the throne forever. And it ends with the Lamb who is now going to lead them, because they won't hunger anymore. They're not going to be stricken by the sun. The Lamb's going to be their shepherd and lead them and wipe away all the tears from their eyes. So, and then chapter 8 opens, and when he opened the 7th seal. See? So the 7th seal, does that mean all this now that's to follow follows these people that are going to be standing before the throne forever? No, it can't be, because they've come out of the great tribulation. So the 7th seal is now back, taking us what you can see. When he opens the 7th seal, this whole thing is going to take us back into this vision now. All right? That's my premise. In other words, back before the 6th seal. Back before the 5th seal, maybe. Right? Let's see where we wind up. And when he opened the 7th seal, there was silence in heaven for about the space of half an hour. Then I saw the 7 angels who stood before God, and 7 trumpets were given to them. When have we been introduced to 7 angels standing before God? It's like the altar we were introduced to in the 5th chapter. Or, I'm sorry, in the 6th chapter after the 5th seal was open. I saw an altar, and the souls of them that were slain. Not an altar, I saw the altar, and under the altar were the souls that had been slain, right? We get introduced to the altar last week, which could only be one altar that John's talking about, but he hadn't mentioned it before. He just pops right out in this 5th seal, right? Because this has all been sealed up. This isn't happening because the Lamb has come on the scene to judge everybody. This is a vision from that dimension of heaven where John is seeing the apocalypse. What I keep trying to, to me, reconcile is this final 7 years of Daniel, that Daniel prophesied. 70 weeks are determined on your people to do all these things. And well, they didn't seal up the most holy place. They haven't anointed the vision, sealed up the vision and prophecy and anointed the most holy place and reconciled, all things, obviously. So the 69 weeks ends with the Messiah being cut off. And the people of the prince that shall come will destroy the city and the sanctuary. And he'll make a covenant with many for 7 years, that 1 week, right? That fits too neatly. I've never heard a better explanation, so that's the one I'm still moved by, is that we're talking about Daniel's 70th week still has to happen as the reconciliation for the Jews, and they will be reconciled by it, not just destroyed, reconciled. But it comes with this wrath that's poured out. Why is the wrath poured out? Because they call someone else Messiah instead of Jesus, right? And they're going to be warned about that for 40 days, I believe, when dead come out of the grave, to tell them, which is all part of their eschatology, Jewish eschatology, even Talmudic eschatology. They know dead will come out of the ground at the time of their final redemption. And when those dead say, as we anticipate, we people who follow Jesus of Nazareth as the Messiah, when they come out and say, Jesus is the Messiah, you got 40 days before he judges the world. You know, and I feel in my heart that has to somehow correlate to the state of Israel claiming someone else as the Messiah, whether they've already just done it, they're about to do it. I can't put my finger on. But that seems to be the issue, because that's the one issue God couldn't, the God must respond to. Until they do that, he can just punish them for killing the Messiah, and they're still waiting for a Messiah, which means that Jesus still could be their Messiah if the 40-day warning were to bring that about, like the last time when he came out of the grave. If they would have, the Jews went out and told them, Peter on Pentecost, right, gets the Spirit, and now the Jews go out telling him Jesus is the Messiah. Well, I suppose the state could have said, really? Whoa, we killed the wrong guy. He rose again. Yeah, I guess we're all witnesses of that. We see the miracles. People are telling us. We can't deny it. He's our Messiah. Yippee. God would have honored that, wouldn't he? There'd be no more beef with the Jews, would there? If they were honoring Jesus as the Messiah, as the Christians came to do. Isn't that what started the Christian church? The acknowledgement that this was the Messiah? So, the picture of it all in Scripture. Remember, it's a Bible study. We're trying to get, what does the Scripture say? Not what does Tony think, it ought to be. What's the God I like best? What's the Christianity I believe in? What am I thinking the Scripture? What am I interpreting the Scripture to say after 30 years of reading it? What's it saying? And so I say it's portraying this pattern where it's going to happen again. Graves, people are going to come out of the graves, go into Jerusalem and tell them Jesus is the Messiah. That's going to cause quite a ruckus, but it is going to result in some of them that are going to believe it. They're going to be handed over to be persecuted again. Many of them are going to be killed for saying that. Not Christians in America. Jews over there in that world with all this radical Islam and radical Zionist Judaism that's either just crowned a different Messiah or is going to. Anyway, people should know if they listen to me, that's my picture, but I want to get that in here to our study of Revelation now, going forward. So he opens the seventh seal. There's silence in heaven for the space of about half an hour, and I saw the 7 angels who stood before God, and 7 trumpets were given to them. Again, we haven't seen these angels yet. We've had angels, the voices as of many angels that numbered in the thousands upon thousands, remember? And the voices of angels were heard, but we haven't heard about 7 specific angels who stood before God. That sounds kind of like the 7 spirits that are before his throne. Are these one and the same? Or are these different representations of the same? I mean, come on, do we know? I don't know. And these are the clues. These are the symbols. We got 7 spirits of God that are before the throne. We got the 7 eyes of the Lamb, which are the 7 spirits of God, which are before the throne that go out into all the world. We got all that evidence. We got 7 stars in his right hand, which are the 7 angels of the churches. And now we got 7 angels who stood before God. Then I saw the 7 angels who stood before God, and 7 trumpets were given to them. So I guess it could be any 7 out of the millions that are around. I saw the 7 that stood before God, and trumpets were given to them. Not like these are the only 7, or you reconcile it for yourself. I'm trying to bring out what seems, these are meaningful symbols. 7 angels, or 7 churches, or 7 stars, or 7 candlesticks, or 7 spirits, or 7 horns, or 7 eyes, 7 trumpets. I mean, come on, this isn't physical world stuff. This is symbology. To me, it's almost like the 12 signs of the zodiac. There's 12 signs because that's the mathematical reality. That's how the physical world is in resemblance to the spiritual world that is even greater than it. The physical manifestation of God's reality in the, if you want to take it to the sense of the Brahminic understanding of Brahman being this, ineffable God, everything that is, the statement of the thing that you can't see or can't state, just like the Jews had, right? The God whose name they couldn't even say because you don't know, you can't say God's name. You don't know God. You only know some sort of resemblance or symbol or manifestation of God. And so the third dimensional physical reality from the Hindu Brahminic point of view, from one of the schools of thought, is that's what we are. That's what everything is. We're just the statement of God in time. This is what God looks like. It looks like all these consciousnesses and flowers and trees and a whole connected system of interwoven sort of karmic reality. That's what God looks like. So and I believe there's a real attachment in my own metaphysical understanding of that to the true reality, but I believe that falls short of the ultimate reality in which the mind of God, the reality of God, is also, in addition, separate from the creation in the way we can imagine ourselves separate from our own creation. We can create a piece of art, even a very intricate one with, a clockwork, like a clock that has a function, that has everything but a life of its own. So if you just sort of extrapolate that to one dimension deeper, it almost seems like a natural extrapolation to imagine then a God which could then create a clockwork which could be, like itself or given the characteristics of itself in the way we could make a model of ourselves but can't breathe life into it. Perhaps that's what we mean when we say this ultimate reality of God, to create and breathe life into something, but we still can't get our minds around what that really is, what God really is. It stands off in some ineffable form to our form. Our mind can only go so far. Our imagination can only grasp what it can, and that's why we get it in the form of a story that's very human. A father, a son, death and life, and these things that are transferable to our imagination, so that some idea of God might be reckoned to us. And that's why, to me, that's what Jesus Christ represents. It's this idea that God's most perfect reckoning in human form is this picture of Jesus Christ. And that's why the great crime of humanity is in distorting that and turning Jesus Christ into some laughing stock, some magic peddling phony, hypocrite, exclusionist, instead of the representation of true love and the power of God to create and to manifest and to heal and to redeem all of creation to some higher purpose. If redeem's even the right word, the whole thing is on some purposeful, creative process in which this whole fall and redemption are of a greater portent. Like building, when I build something out of wood, there's often times when it all seems quite hopeless and looks very, right? There's a lot of destruction to get to something that has its function preordained or whatever. So if you can imagine that in this scheme, and it's written right in this book, and it's written right in the whole book, but even in this book of Revelation we're reading, there's a greater thing coming. A new heaven, a new earth, a new creation. No sin. All the old stuff wiped away. So, who are we to imagine that this current situation of life and death is all that there is, and is, how believers are going to Club Med and non-believers are going to hell? Why does that have to, where do you find that, and why does that sound so important? So anyway, here we are with the first mention of these 7 angels who stand before the throne, and 7 trumpets are given to them. And remember now, and when he opened the 7th seal. So this is all still within this little scroll that was in the hand of the one who sat on the throne. It's all within that. It's not something other than. That's why I say it's a look deeper into that scroll, not now following these events or these other events. Oh, and then the Lamb did this, and then God did that. Oh, now let's have 7 trumpets. No, these 7 trumpets are within the scroll, within the seals. Then I saw the 7 angels who stood before God, and 7 trumpets were given to them. And another angel came and stood at the altar, and he had a golden censer, and abundant incense was given to him, that he might offer it with the prayers of all the saints upon the golden altar, which was before the throne. Remember, incense represented the prayers back in the days of the temple. They had to burn the incense. That represented, frankincense and myrrh, as Dad's always saying, the hilarity and joy of sort of participating. It represents the attitude of the people who love God and know that they're participating with God in a journey that's different than the material one that pulls at our senses. So we got this vision, another angel. In addition, I saw the 7 angels who stood before God, 7 trumpets given to them, and another angel came. So this is an 8th angel, and stood at the altar. This is that altar that got mentioned, right? Back where the souls of the ones that are under it, the martyrs. So an 8th angel comes and stands at the altar, and he had a golden censer, and abundant incense was given to him, that he might offer it with the prayers of all the saints upon the golden altar, which was before the throne. And the smoke of the incense, which came with the prayers of the saints, ascended up before God out of the angel's hand. And the angel took the censer and filled it with the fire of the altar, and cast it upon the earth. And there were voices and thunderings and lightnings and an earthquake. And the 7 angels who had the 7 trumpets prepared themselves to sound. Okay, remember, it's all within the seal, all within the scroll. And so, try and get the deeper vision here. These 7 angels that are standing before the altar now and trumpets are given to them. They don't show up with trumpets. They're standing before the throne. I mean, this is John's vision. Trumpets are given to him. This is when this seventh seal opens. He sees this unfolding of this whole part of the vision. And it starts with these angels at the altar and all the incense. Why is the incense and the prayers of the saints important? When is this? Which saints are we talking about now? And why are these prayers important? That this smoke is kindled on the altar to come up before God out of the angel's hand. And so then he takes the censer and fills it with fire out of the altar and casts it on the earth. So he shows up with this golden censer. He kindles this fire that are the incense of the prayers out of his hand. The fire, the smell's going up. The prayers are going up. The prayers ascend. See, what prayers? When is this? We read through it like it's just oh hum, like it's just window dressing for God's wrath. But I say, this is here for a reason. It's important. Who are these saints? These sainted to God. They're, I imagine again, this is all this house of Israel stuff. That's the way I'm seeing it, because the 7 churches are, the time of the churches is over. Unless all of this is the churches in heaven, these are the saints. This is their prayers for the salvation of the rest of mankind. I mean, I don't know how you read this. I don't know how I read this yet. That's why I can't just roll on through it like it's so understandable. I challenge anyone or ask anyone who thinks they understand it to give me their understanding of it. When is this? Is this the beginning of the 7-year period, midpoint, end of the 7-year period? We just came out of the 7th chapter where this multitude stands before the throne that no one can count out of every nation, after being told that 12,000 out of each of the nations of Israel would be marked before anything was hurt. After being shown that after the 6th seal, everything was going to be destroyed to the point of like a polar shift, an earth-destroying cataclysm that's going to have everybody on the earth, great and small, hiding in the rocks, praying for them to fall on them, to hide them from the face of the one who sits on the throne. So we've been taken right through the last cataclysm. And then we've been shown, but before that, angels are going to be told to hold back, don't hurt anything till we mark our servants. That seems to be what is then going to result in, because after this I saw a multitude that nobody could count. Because who does he mark? The servants of God. And then I saw, right? So these are our servants being marked, whoever they are, the servants of God from each of the 12 tribes. Why would it be, why would it be designated from each of the 12 tribes? Who are they going to be saving then? And why is this saving designated from every tribe and nation and people with white robes singing, and palm fronds singing salvation to our God? And they're going to worship in the temple. Doesn't that give you an idea of a throwback to the time of Moses and the temple? Worship in the temple again, not in heaven. Not even as I was listening to myself last week, and why did I say tabernacle that comes down at the end of Revelation? Why do I liken it to that? Where does he say tabernacle of God? Right? Why are those two things the same thing in my mind? The temple's the one that'll be set up in Jerusalem again. Only this time it won't be the same kind of worship with slaying animals, will it? It'll be singing and praising that the lamb that was slain was worthy. And the incense can be burned now that goes up before God forever, because he saved everybody with his mercy You see, something like that. So these could be all people. I'm just pointing out that it seems more that that's my vision of the whole happening, and this is how these parts must fit into that happening. These people that worship in the temple, that's the temple on earth over there in Jerusalem that God's going to set up before this book is out. The stone that's cut without hands that Daniel sees, it becomes a great mountain and never will. It will become a nation that will never end, a kingdom that never is destroyed. Are you going to interpret that and say that's this nation of Israel now? They'll never be destroyed? Then what about all this? What about them being destroyed down to a remnant? I say that has to happen because that nation is not the one God set up. That's not the one the Messiah is bringing back with him to be a blessing to the world and to set up his temple and rule with someone on the seat of David forever. And that's the way, from Sheikh Imran Hossein, I've learned that he understands the Quranic scriptures to mean that God said after they killed Jesus, the true Messiah, that's it. You're off that land. You're never coming back. See, so that's where, to me, the confirmation fits in this idea of these Khazarian Jews that just claim to be Jews, the synagogue of Satan that claims to be Jews and are not. They're just after using the scriptures to get that land, to say, hey, we're God's people, that land is ours. We can go slaughter those Arabs and take it back in the name of God. Some of them probably even believe we'll be supported by God. I mean, if you're a religious person, then that is what you believe, right? You believe God's on your side to go take it. That's the twist in modern humanity. And why we should stop judging each other, because doesn't it say, God, doesn't Paul say in Romans, what if God took great care in preparing some vessels, like the potter that can prepare some vessels for noble use and others for common use? What if he prepared some things for to be the object to his wrath? Took great care to prepare them. Who are we to say what he does with the stuff that he's making and what he's making it for? See? And how he can give salvation, and to who, and under what circumstances, and all that. That's why we're not to judge, only to keep loving. That's his nature shown in us. Okay, so I'm just trying to get at this importance of these seven angels now. This is something that's quite telling. These seven angels that are given trumpets now, and this one that stands before the throne with the incense of, this seems to be at the very end again, looking back. From the end, looking back. The angels before the throne with the incense, and this is a vision of this entire cataclysm. Because the prayers of the saints are what allow this censer to be filled with fire and thrown on the earth, and voices and thunderings and lightnings and a great earthquake, an earthquake, and the seven angels who had the seven trumpets prepared themselves to sound, right? Because, like I say, they're a deeper look into this whole thing again. So I'm just trying to put a little deeper perspective to say that this vision here of the incense and the saints and, all that is this idea of salvation being what's tantamount to being inside this scroll. The prayers of these saints, these multitude that no one can count, standing before the throne, having come out of tribulation, saying salvation. And God's wiping away tears now and keeping sun off people's backs and feeding and clothing. God's leading people to springs of water. And they're so thankful they're going to serve in his temple before his throne forever. right? That's this vision that's being painted to me, not one of condemnation and damnation, any of that. And it's these prayers that are going up before God, this thankfulness, this salvation that's allowing this fire now. That's what's in this, scroll, this righteous wrath, because the real Messiah did come. The real price was paid. The death was the blood was spilled, and no one else is willing to do that. He's the only one worthy. And yet now this false state of Israel is going to try and, play a charade and play off a false Messiah who would never be willing to pay that price, right? A false Messiah that's full of lies and arrogance, right? Doesn't it say he gets this boastful, this prideful spirit in his heart and goes after the promised land. That's what brings him to his downfall. He starts to realize how strong and how great he is. And so, this is the Messiah that they claim. This arrogant, prideful Messiah, loving of weapons and, through peace destroying many. Where the real Messiah is going to bring the salvation, give the salvation through his mercy and lead these people to springs of living water, is what's destined. That's what all the hubbub's about, all the happiness, all the praise. Thank God. Not, well, look at that. He sent everybody. He's burning everybody in hell. No, he's able. The Lamb is able to give this salvation, is able to bring these people to living water, to regraft this lost nation, this branch that was cut off back on. And it's the prayers of those saints that go up before the throne in this dimension that are the real power behind, or the justification, the sanctification of all this wrath that's coming, this death. Because this death is God destroying the pieces of pottery he had created for this destruction. Something we can't see in our third dimension as merciful and just and all these things, which is why we're not supposed to judge. But yet this is the outcome of it all. This is how it gets to a new creation where there is no more wrath, because there is no more sin, because there is no more disobedience, because there is no more temptation, because there is no more devil. Right? Right now, that's all part of what's playing out in creation. Okay, so I want to try and get a little farther today, Dad, so I'm going to try and cut I'm laying the foundation now, like Scott used to say, right? Long prelude, short message. So now let's try and let people fit that into that context. Let the scriptures sort of flow into that if they do for you. So now we have the setup for the 7 angels to sound. Not just some chronological, okay, now march out the incense. All right, burn it. Okay, that's long. Yeah, let's get back to the killing. Because killing's all that we're about here, judgment and killing. It's not what the symbology is showing me. And the 7 angels who had the 7 trumpets prepared themselves to sound. Now this is after the smoke of the incense which came with the prayers of the saints ascended up before God out of the angel's hand, and the angel took the censer and filled it with the fire of the altar and cast it upon the earth. And there were voices and thunderings and lightnings and an earthquake. And the 7 angels who had the 7 trumpets prepared themselves to sound. The first angel sounded, and there followed hail and fire mingled with water. And they were poured upon the earth, and a third part of the earth was burnt up, and a third part of the trees was burnt up, and all the green grass was burnt up. Now again, like the fourth part of the earth we read about with the last horse, the pale horse, the green horse, the fourth part of the earth, it was given to him to kill. And I talked about, I agree with that other pastor from Hawaii, that makes more sense to think of as a portion of the earth, not 25% of the people. But we're going to get to something here that doesn't leave that open, that I've never heard that pastor talk about. But I just want to cover all our, I want people, when they study it, to be able to discern. Don't let the tradition roll everything up into one vision of it. So here we are talking about what it says is a third part of the trees was burned up. Third part of the earth was burned up. A third part, and all the green grass. So that sounds like portion of earth again. And for me, the hail and fire mingled with water sounds a lot like some sort of, volcanic explosion kind of thing, right? Is something like one of these mountains, like Yellowstone, maybe, or that kind of thing. Maybe a few of them at once, couple of three of them across that chain of that caldera, or whatever. Going off maybe even in the winter, so that you wind up with hail, snow, sort of chunks of ice falling along with fire, along with water. I mean, I don't know. I'm just trying to put a little bit of reality, because I think it's all got to happen. We're seeing symbols seen through the eyes of someone getting all this in vision, seeing it as angels sounding trumpets and seals being opened by a lamb that looks like it's had its throat cut, getting a scroll out of the hand of someone, the one who sat on the throne, that looks like they're made of stone. This is, try and grasp what we're seeing here and what it might mean. I don't think it's just Jesus proclaiming certain physical torments, and those torments happening in the matter necessarily prescribed here. I think you have to read the symbols for what they are. When it says 5 months and stings like scorpions, that seems to be pretty darn straightforward. But when it says, I saw the first angel sounded, and there followed hail and fire mingled with water, and they were poured upon the earth, and a third part of the earth was burned up. I mean, I don't think that's quite as straightforward. It sounds like what we're seeing is poured upon the earth, some sort of, witch's brew poured out of what? A big pot? A pot as big as the earth? I mean, come on. What does that mean down here on the earth? What are we feeling? It sounds to me like maybe one of these giant explosions. I don't know what else would cause that. Perhaps this has all got to do with comets and meteors. When we read a little further, that's going to seem a little more obvious. Okay, so let's just stick with me for a minute. But a third part of the earth, it seems like a portion of the earth, a big chunk of land is going to be affected by this. And all the grass on that land is going to be burnt. It's going to be hot. That's why I see it as volcanic. But if it happened during the winter with one of these tall, or several of these tall snow-covered volcanoes, it could account for the hail and the water. If it reached all the way down into the water source miles below, it could easily be water falling at the same time as fire falling. So anyway, that's the sort of thing, that the image that comes to my mind. Then the second angel sounded, and as it were a great mountain aflame with fire was cast into the sea, and the third part of the sea became blood. Now that certainly sounds like some sort of asteroid to me, as far as an image. A great mountain aflame with fire. was cast into the sea. Now, recall, there's this modern prophecy, supposed, from a pastor in Puerto Rico that says there's going to be this asteroid that hits near there. It's going to wipe out Puerto Rico, wipe out much of the eastern seaboard, right? Now, did they write this prophecy because they've always had revelation and someone made this up as fiction for the modern day? Yeah, very well could be. But this prophecy certainly was written long enough ago that we know, that this was written in some sort of anticipation. A great mountain aflame with fire cast into the sea. Where in the sea that a third part of the sea became blood? And the third part of the creatures which were in the sea and had life died. And the third part of the ships were destroyed. Now, even if that's symbolical with third part, it still sounds like a great part of the water, doesn't it? So this sounds like a pretty big catastrophe that what's seen, even if it's only a third part of the Mediterranean, if that's what John's seeing as the sea, that's still a big catastrophe. A third part of the Mediterranean Sea, is that what he's talking about? Because that's the sea he means. When he says the land, the sea, is he talking just over there? Or is this the whole earth? Because, it says hail and fire mingle with water. They were poured upon the whole earth when the first angel sounded. So, traditional Christianity has always just taken it so literally. That's why I'm not afraid to accept a literal translation. I'm just trying to dig a little deeper here. What fits in with our total understanding of what we're expecting to happen throughout, Daniel's prophecies and the rest of Revelation. So I'm saying let's just keep our minds open. But what it looks like to me here right off the bat is some sort of natural disasters as far as what we're going to face when we get to the point of these, what Revelation's showing is the angels sounding their trumpets. And the first one is going to come in the form of perhaps a volcano or something else falling out of the sky that resembles hail and fire mingled with water, poured upon the earth, and burning up some what might be reckoned in some symbology as a third part of the earth. Trees, all grass. That's not going to be, not going to be easy to miss that. And then the second angel, and a great mountain of flame thrown into the sea, such that a third part of the sea became blood, and third part of the creatures in the sea died, and a third part of the ships destroyed. I mean, so if it were Puerto Rico, that's a big part of the sea, the whole sort of Gulf of Mexico, eastern seaboard, the ships that go up the eastern seaboard, perhaps all throughout the Caribbean, many of the ships there, and all the shipping that's going on that would get destroyed, would that account for a third part? I don't know. Is that what that means? Sounds like a pretty big catastrophe. If it indeed is reflected in that way as a whole world catastrophe. If it was on that side of the world, it would be a little easier to reckon if you were simply talking about the world of John in his day, but I'm not sure that we know. Certainly the sixth seal talks about every mountain and island, the stars falling, the sky receding, and every rich man hiding in the mountains. So what would have to happen even for that to happen over there? Sounds like, again, some sort of polar shift or some great asteroid so big hitting the earth that it would alter the course of the earth. And we're going to get to that. I want to get to that day today, Dad. If not, it'll be next week. But it's coming here pretty quick. Why I feel something confirming is coming with that view. So hold your mind open, please. And the third angel sounded, and there fell a star from heaven, burning as though it were a lamp. And it fell upon a third part of the rivers, and upon the fountains of waters. And the name of the star is called Wormwood, and the third part of the waters became wormwood, and many men died of the waters because they were made bitter. See, again, many men died. That's still much earlier in our trip than our sixth seal and everybody hiding in the rocks, right? This obviously is happening before that. It's going on sometime between our first horse and our last horse, between our hold everything back before anybody's hurt and all these people with white robes that have come through the tribulation, between the souls of people who are waiting for those to be killed as they were, and the sixth seal that has a great earthquake and ends with everybody praying the mountains fall on them. So somewhere in those, in that time period, this is also going on. And again, it's something falling from the sky, which is why it sounds, like this whole thing we've been led to be afraid of, that, because perhaps people know that something is coming, and why they've been building caves for decades is because things are destined to come pulverizing the earth from the sky. Perhaps they've always known that. Perhaps someone's always known that. But the third angel sounded, and there fell a star from heaven, burning as though it were a lamp. This could also be some man-made thing, recall. It could be some sort of picture of a rocket that killed all these waters as a result. So it just shows that by this third angel, something's going to hit the waters and affect the water source, and a third part of the waters, and many men are going to die because the waters go bad. And the fourth angel sounded, and a third part of the sun was eclipsed, and a third part of the moon, and the third part of the stars, so that the third part of them was darkened. And the day was darkened for a third part of it, and the night likewise. Now, is this part of what's leading up to this, what the sixth seal is describing, is what it seems like to me, stars falling and such. Is this all the beginnings of it? Does the sixth seal happen all at once? On the same day? Boom, an earthquake, sun goes dark, moon turns to blood, stars fall. All the mountains move. All this happens. The people are in the caves falling, praying for the rocks to fall. All that's in what, a 24-hour period? How do you picture that? Is that all one event that happens at once? I imagine, the picture I'm starting to get is stuff that's building up now. Stuff's falling into the sea and killing it, killing the ships, causing what? Tidal waves, apparently. Stuff's falling out of the sky, rain and hail, and killing, burning up a third of the earth. Stuff's falling out of the sky and poisoning a third of the water. By the time, so this sixth seal is representative, I'm thinking, of all of these things as they culminate. And so here you have third part of the sun, third part of the moon, third part of the stars, right? And that sort of the day was darkened for a third part of it, and the night likewise. Meaning the timetable's been switched. Now, stick with me, because here's what I was hoping to get to. I may not today, but it's about the time. What's going on here, and where are we in our 7-year period, that the altar of time, third part of the day, third part of the night. And I beheld and heard an eagle, having a tail red as it were blood, flying through the midst of the sky of heaven. Remember, in this dimension now, in this vision, not on earth flying through the sky. John's been taken to heaven. I saw a door open in the sky. And behold, and I beheld and heard an eagle, having a tail red as it were blood, flying through the midst of heaven, saying with a loud voice, Woe, woe, woe to those who dwell on the earth, by reason of the other sounds of the trumpets of the three angels which are yet to sound. See? So now to me, this is our culmination of that sixth seal, 7-year period, wrath of God. right? That's all being demonstrated here, that if you thought that was bad, there's, woe to who's still alive now. The dead are better off, it almost seems. So the 9th chapter opens with the 5th angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven upon the earth. Remember, you just saw that with the 4th angel. Or I'm sorry, the 3rd angel, star falls and turns all the water, a third part of the water, and many men die. And then a 4th angel's, and this whole other sort of astronomical, sun, moon, stars, day and night change, right? Now 5th angel sounds, and a star falls from heaven again and upon the earth, and to him was given the key to the bottomless pit. So this star that falls is like an angel falling, apparently, or to him was given a key to the bottomless pit. So this isn't like the same astronomical happening, but interesting that it's mentioned that way, not an angel, excuse me, that the 5th angel sounded and an angel came down. It says, and I saw a star fall from heaven upon the earth, and to him was given the key to the bottomless pit. And it's just the way that angels come to earth. They fall to earth. I saw an angel fall. When an angel needs to do something in the earth, when God, when the supernatural needs to accomplish something in the natural, if that's a realistic way of seeing the metaphysic, an angel falls to the earth like the way a comet falls through the gravity to the earth. But anyway, after the 5th angel sounds, a star falls, and to him was given the key to the bottomless pit, and he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose a smoke out of the pit like smoke belching from a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. Now is this the sun and the that are left? Apparently, remember, a third of it was just disappeared on the last angel. And the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. And there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth, and to them was given power, as the scorpions of the earth have power. And it was commanded them that they should not hurt the grass of the earth. So there's some grass left, right? Only a third part was burned up. Neither any green thing, neither any tree, but only those men who do not have the seal of God on their brows, which we found about back in the fifth or sixth chapter, 5th chapter. Don't hurt anything till we seal up the 144,000 servants. And they were commanded that they should not kill them, but that they should torment 5 months. Which means the rest of us are open season if we're here, right? I haven't come to anything yet about the church being gone. We have to explore that on another issue. But whoever is here on the earth, only these 144,000 would appear to be safe from these guys. That's why woe, woe, woe to those who dwell on the earth. So that they should torment. So, and it doesn't say that these guys should distinguish between anybody either. So whoever's left, so who, what is this? I still say this is some sort of, something that isn't having an intelligence to consider who they're tormenting. They were commanded that they should not kill them, but that they should be tormented 5 months. Anyone that doesn't have the seal of God. And their torment was as the torment of a scorpion when it strikes a man. So in those days men shall seek death and shall not find it, and shall desire to die, and death shall flee from them. So this is like the prelude to the ones that are hiding in the rocks now, saying, fall on us and kill us, hide us from the one who sits on the throne. Nothing here about the face of him who sits on the throne or the Lamb. So they haven't seen that yet. They're not asking to be hidden from that. But now we're to the time when people will seek death. And the shapes of the locusts were like horses prepared for battle, and on their heads were, as it were, crowns like gold. And their faces were like faces of men. How creepy is that now? What John's seeing. Now, is that what the people are seeing who are being stung? See, I don't think so. And Dad, I hope before we end today I could get to the reason why. But it may not be till next week. actually, that I'm able to tie this together. So people might have to hang on. Maybe read this a couple of times yourself, like I have this last week, and let it, let the Spirit talk to you. See what, if it makes any sense to you. Now, because I find this a little interesting. This look John's got of these locusts that come out of this smoke that comes out of this pit that's opened from a star that falls to the earth, and the keys given to him to open the bottomless pit, right? And powers given to these things to harm men for 5 months. Feel like the way a scorpion feels. And now here's what they look like. But look like to John in this vision, just like here's what God looks like on this throne. Here's what these animals look like with the 6 wings each. Here's what these 4 and 20 elders with the white robes and the golden sash, right? But do we see any of that? Not in our realm. Shapes of the locusts were like horses prepared for battle. On their heads were, as it were, crowns like gold, and their faces were like faces of men, and they had hair like the hair of women, and their teeth were like the teeth of lions. And they had breastplates as though they were breastplates of iron, and the sound of their wings was like the sound of chariots and many horses running to battle. And they had tails like scorpions, and there were stings in their tails, and they had power to hurt men 5 months. And they had a king over them, who was the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in Hebrew is Abaddon. It says in my Bible, I know it says Abaddon with an N in the King James Version. Mine doesn't have the N. So it says the name in Hebrew is Abaddon, but in Greek his name is Apollyon. The first woe is past, and behold, 2 more woes follow after. So that's your first woe, is these locust demons. But again, they had a king over them who was the angel of the bottomless pit. Well, just like the angel of the churches, right? Just like these angels that are sounding the trumpets. We don't see that. We don't see the angel that are over these locust demons that have this look to them. So I don't think, for those fundamentalist Christians that pray, you'll be scared when you see these guys coming. I doubt you'll see these as these. I think this will be more like some sort of fallout from chemical warfare. I think it will happen over there to the Jews in the land where this chemical warfare is going to happen. I think it's a warning to them, and it's going to the effect of this chemical or of this weapon will last 5 months before it stops stinging every time you encounter it, wherever it is or however it works. It won't stop stinging people. Ow, 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 until, and if you could see these particles, they look like these evil things that have come out of the pit and have faces. Okay, so perhaps I'm underestimating it. Perhaps it is something out of the pit that isn't man-made, right? But I still think it's going to be in the sense of microscopic particles. It's going to be like smoke. And it's that smoke that we see and feel. Ow, oh, wow, that smoke hurts, right? Anybody that smoke touches, I guess, it hurts. But you won't see these things that are being commanded by this angel. That we're being told through the vision what they look like. This is what's hurting you, so that the servants of God will know. This is what's hurting you. Okay, so that's the first woe. When the 6th angel sounded, and the 6th angel sounded, and I heard a voice from the horns of the golden altar which is before God. Here the altar's being mentioned again, right? This is now the 3rd time. Saying to the 6th angel, so a voice from the horns of the gold altar saying to the 6th angel, which had the trumpet, loose the 4 angels which are bound by the great river Euphrates. and the 4 angels were loose. So it doesn't even say the angel sounded his trumpet. A voice came out from the horns of the gold altar before the throne, before God. And it said to the angel holding the trumpet, loose the 4 angels which are bound by the great river Euphrates. And the 4 angels were loosed, those which were prepared for that hour and for that day and for that month and for that year, so that they might slay the third part of men. And the number of the army of the horsemen was 200,000. I heard the number of them. So we're talking 200 million horsemen. Now, again, this is angelic. What do they look like to us? I'm not sure, but this is where I want to get to today, Dad, to end. We're just about there, so thank you for hanging on, anybody that's there at the end here with me. I've just got a couple paragraphs left. These 4 angels obviously aren't what we're seeing, right? These angels, they're loosing 200 million horsemen that have been prepared for that day. You know, the potter preparing some pots for destruction. Things, right? This is the time. This is the wrath. This is the seal that's been in the hand of the one who sits on the throne since the beginning of time. And the Lamb is the only one worthy to let this out, because he's the Messiah. He died. He was slain. Right? So, and thus I saw the horses, this 200 million. And thus I saw the horses in the vision. See, in the vision. And those who sat on them. And they had breastplates of fire, and of jacinth, and of brimstone. And the heads of the horses were like the heads of lions, and out of their mouths issued fire and smoke and brimstone. And by these 3 plagues was the third part of men slain, by the fire, and by the smoke, and by the brimstone, which issued out of their mouths. For the power of the horses was in their mouths, and in their tails, for their tails were like serpents, and had heads, and with them they do harm. And the rest of the men who were not killed by these plagues, neither repented of the works of their hands, that is to say, the worship of devils and idols, of gold and silver and brass and stone and of wood, which can neither see nor hear, nor repented of their murders, nor of their witchcraft, nor of their fornication, nor of their thefts. So now, here's the real point, and we'll pick it up next week with this, the rest of the men, because I think that points to the timing of it all. But the fact that when these 200 million horsemen are loosed, guided by the 4 angels that have been waiting for this day under the great river Euphrates, apparently, that the 6th angel is told from out of the horns of the altar of God to go let him loose now. Now's the time to slay a third part of men. Now, that doesn't say territory. And like I say, I've never heard what my friend there in Hawaii has to say on that, but to me, that says a third part of men. So that sounds pretty overwhelming. Sounds like a third part of men are to be slain. But how? By horsemen that we see riding up with fire issuing out of their mouth and snakes in their tails, like I've traditionally been taught, threatening me. In traditional Christianity's view, well, here it seems to be saying that, and out of their mouths issued fire and smoke and brimstone, and by these 3 plagues was the third part of men slain, by the fire and by the smoke and by the brimstone which issued out of their mouths. So from our end, it looks like what we'll see is fire and smoke and brimstone, and that sounds like it's a result of a lot of this stuff falling out of the sky, right? Whether it's asteroids into the ocean, or things blowing up like giant volcanoes, or whether it's man-made nuclear bombs that have been sent down to do particular destruction, or comets, or you see what I mean? It seems like the whole vision of it to me is starting to show that from John's side, what's happening is this loosing of seals and the wrath that's been waiting for its time of destruction. Not like it's a reaction of God. Okay, well, now that you're that bad, now that you guys are all committing such fornication and homosexuality, that's it. I'm loosening these demons on you to kill you and judge you. That's not what it sounds like to me, Dad. It sounds like this is a timing that's always been set. And as we come to the end of Revelation, of course, we're going to see that the timing includes a resetting of it all. So I don't want to take up so much time today. I know I've gone so far, so I think I'll try and drop it quickly here so we can pick it up next week on this idea that that in our world we're seeing this great destruction, which appears to me to look like natural destruction, even if it is man-made, even if it's energy weapons and plasma balls that they can make look like comets. The trumpet judgments, as they've been called through Christianity, seem to be things that are going to appear more to us like smoke that hurts because there's some chemical in it or something in it, some particle, some energy, that hurts us, as the materialists might explain it when they're able to test it, if they are, that it has some vibration that stings, like the way they're able to do ultrasound or something on a person's body. They're using wave frequency. From John's perspective, he's showing it, from us as looking at it from a dimensional perspective of the supernatural. It's this happening on the earth, this wrath of God. This is what the servants of God are being told. This is what's really going on. It's not going to look like that. It's going to look like something fell out of the sky like a mountain on fire into the ocean and killed a third of it and destroyed the ships. It's going to look like the sun just turned, the stars starting to fall. Right? These are the symptoms we're going to see. Stuff falling out of the sky. But what John's showing is to the servants of God, these are these seals that have opened. This scroll is happening that's been waiting. The throne of God has been set in place. The Ancient of Days is sitting. It's the time of the great day. The time is at hand. So anyway, that's how I'm seeing it right now, Dad, and I'm anxious to pick it up next week because there's some fun stuff coming up that, as I've recalled from when we talked about it last year, that with all the rest of these judgments, and not only that, the great whore that sits on the scarlet beast and all that. That's fun to get into again now with what's going on in the world and rehash all that. So thanks, Dad, for having this on the show, and I'll talk to you for the Sunday show. Take care, everybody out there. Love your neighbor. That's the law. It's all summed up, Paul says. Whatever laws there may be, he told them, are all summed up in this one. Love your neighbor as yourself. And love, of course, is something that, that divine love is the unselfishness, the forgiveness, not judging but giving, even your enemy, even the people that persecute you. So we can't be hating. We can't be wanting to kill these people as if they're our enemy, these Muslims or anybody else. Our enemy is oppression, our enemy is fear, and our enemy is not being able to love. Because if we all did that, God's Spirit would just be there. God's kingdom will be that. when it just appears, when heaven comes to dwell among men, it will just be love. It won't be punishing people that want to do evil. So anyway, thanks for being here. I'll talk to you next week. God bless.